Hello, thanks for joining me. I'm looking forward to diving into an interesting topic today, which is around specialist training, particularly for final interview sales and presentation training for construction industry companies. So I'm joined by Reggie Pierce, and Reggie is from Organization Learning Group. Reggie, thanks very much for joining me today.
Not at all. You're totally welcome. How you doing?
Great. So yeah, fascinating area. So I want to go back and zoom out a little bit and look at the macro or the big picture level. Construction industries who are facing the final interview, that final stage where they've gone through the RFP process, that can take weeks, months, and jet setting around and hours of work involved. That final stage, when it's crunch time, can you give us some of the big picture problems and challenges that can be associated with not doing it well?
Yeah, it is. To your point, there's a tremendous amount of effort that goes into getting invited to the interview. Mm-hmm. So if you're down to the last 3 or 5 organizations, and I think the biggest challenge when they put that effort in and don't win is, number one, that maybe they're not hitting their target in terms of close ratios.
Yeah.
So if you think about the industry averages, so the best of the best have a close ratio of qualified leads of about 30%. The industry average is about 20%. So whether these companies are shooting for top of the class or the industry average, they're missing the mark.
Yeah.
And there's obviously the investment ROI that's lost when they don't win the deal. And I think that's what they're looking at when they invite companies like Organization Learning Group and my team in to help them.
Yeah, because I can imagine it can affect in all sorts of ways with the revenue lost. And then I've been through RFP processes, not necessarily in construction, but in other sectors. And I know that everyone sounds the same. That's a big challenge, right?
Yeah. And I think that's, some organizations and industries have looked at, why aren't we winning? And one of the themes that emerged across industries is when we get down to the final selection and you're the top 3 companies, for example, that are invited to present, the feedback is when we listen to you and see you, you all look the same, you all sound the same, you use the same language. So you leave us, the buyer, in a difficult position because you haven't ultimately differentiated yourself from each other. And if that's the case, then what's the one criterion that we're going to decide on?
Yeah.
Price. Right. And not all companies are selling based on price. So it's a lack of differentiation oftentimes is a factor in not being chosen.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. And so how are the different roles affected in the final interview stage, whether that's getting it right, getting it wrong? Because I'm imagining that there's lots of people involved in the process and it can affect them in different ways. Can you give some perspective on that?
So you've got, in construction, you depending on the size of the deal, you might have a C-level executive involved. You'll typically have a project executive, a project manager, a pre-construction manager, somebody from the design side involved within the organization, the VDC manager. So you've got a diversity of roles, and what are they trying to achieve? They're trying to achieve proving to the buyer, the prospective client, that they have, in terms of their role, in terms of the project that they're presenting against, in terms of their own organization, that they're representing themselves in a way that aligns with what this client is trying to achieve in the project.
Got it. Okay. And I come from an HR background, so I mean, I have to, you'll have to indulge me for this one, but from my perspective, for companies in this sector that don't win in that final interview, that final round stage, that obviously it hits the budget, but from an HR perspective, I think there are people elements involved. So one is just that kick in the guts. You've gone through all these weeks and months of hard work, and I'll bet you anything you guys they probably go through training or pre-sessions and things like that to work on their presentations. I'm also guessing that some of them are probably more technical experts, engineers, things like that, who that's not what they signed up for when they went to college, is it?
Absolutely not. And, it is, I want to be in construction. I want to build buildings and feel the achievement of building, in some instances, some stunning buildings, right?
Yeah.
Constructions. And then, they get a little bit into their career, get enough experience, and they are invited to be part of these presentation teams. And that's not what they signed up for. So there's sort of the inherent resistance to become a sales, and nobody likes to have that label, to go and sell this project. So it's more about the getting confident, getting comfortable in their own skin to be able to represent, like I said, the role, project, the organization. Yeah. And the negative, what's the downside of putting in the effort to do the dry runs, sometimes, 5, 6 dry runs in preparation for an interview. Mm-hmm. You don't get the deal. From an HR perspective, right? The morale impact, it sucks to lose. Also the, if they're not winning enough deals, there becomes an internal resistance in the organization to raise your hand and ask to be on the bench, participate in those teams. Yeah. And also then particularly, some more experienced folks are, they see it as sort of the less appealing aspect to their job. But for the younger members who are trying to build a career, it's an opportunity to prove themselves. Yeah. So they want to be on a good presentation team. They want to win deals to get some visibility in terms of building their own career within the organization.
Yeah. And then again, from that HR perspective, if it doesn't work for them, then I suspect they'll go and start looking around elsewhere and leave the organization. Hence, you get that great resignation thing, but made worse because you're causing it.
Yeah.
Is that fair enough?
Yeah. I mean, it is. And I don't want to be negative about it. Yes, that's an outcome of we're not winning and it sucks. But on the upside, the thrill of winning a big deal, of winning that project and that construction project that is exciting or interesting to you is an opportunity to retain more of the right people. So winning is important.
Yeah. And for some of the people involved in doing the presentation itself, what do they get wrong at differing levels? Because I'm imagining that a technical specialist will love to talk about the technical details, but maybe the end client isn't as interested in that. Is that a real consideration or an issue?
I think thematically it's pretty universal. In that, I've got a technical expertise. I'm asked to present against that technical expertise, pre-con manager or site superintendent, and the challenge for me is to, and my role on this project, should we win the project, in a way that resonates with what the prospective client is looking for. So what often happens is I tend to speak to my technical experience and expertise in the way that I want to represent it. Right. So for example, it might be, if I'm a site superintendent, I am presenting for an opportunity where we're clearing the site. And I talk about literally the rock sizes that we're going to end up with after demolishment of whatever it is.
I'd talk about that if I could. That sounds cool.
Right. It's cool, right? And the number of trucks that we're going to have coming through the site while we're, and if it's an active, for example, if it's an active university campus or school, it may be interesting to the site superintendent that that particular rock size will require that number of trucks over that number of weeks to get the site ready for construction. Okay, it's interesting to him or her, them, but it may not be interesting to the audience that might include a dean or a school superintendent. What do they want to know about? They want to know about, while those trucks are rolling through my active campus, are my students going to be safe?
Oh, wow, yeah.
So, what am I trying to help that site superintendent do? Yes, talk about the number of trucks coming through, and yes, talk about how you're going to manage safety in that context. So the work I do, and I just use a site superintendent as an example, is to help each respective presenter represent their contribution to this project in a way that resonates to the needs of what the committee or whatever it is looking to hear, to help them make a decision that this is the right team of people, this is the right organization.
Yeah.
Based on what they're saying and how they're showing up, these are the kind of people that will be collaborative. These are the kind of people that will, when it hits the fan, will be there for us and have our back, and that will be in it with us and be equally as passionate about this project as we are.
Got it.
I think oftentimes presenters get lost in their own content and forget that that's what the client or prospective client is looking for.
So you triggered a thought there that it's not just about the numbers, the dimensions, the volume, the delivery schedule, let's say. It's also about the people, the human element, because they're going to be working together on this project. And we've all worked with people who aren't so great, aren't so nice, and it can drive you crazy. Yes, they delivered the thing on time or whatever, but God, it was a terrible experience. So bringing across that human element, I suspect, is going to help get some companies over the line. Is that part of what it covers?
Yes, and I think it's a great point that you're making. And I would argue, not just anecdotally, but based on research, that they are looking for the people aspect to this construction project.
Yeah.
So if you're down to the last three in a construction project, an opportunity, they've done their research. They know who your company is at some level, and they have decided that technically you can probably meet their requirements. So when you're presenting in the interview, yes, you've got to validate that, but you've also got to emphasize the people side of it.
Yeah.
And I think that often gets lost in the mix.
Got it. One thing, can you stop wobbling the desk?
Was it moving?
Still here. Okay, so there's so much in that from a company level, big picture level. Winning that final interview, that's revenue. One, it's revenue lost. It could mean more projects, prestige things, prestige projects. Success breeds success, so they could win more business. From an HR perspective, it's probably easier to hire staff because they see you as the place to be, where the action is. You're winning the good stuff, as opposed to the second place, which they didn't get something again. No, I'm not going there. If I've got the choice between two job offers, and vice versa for the talented people in there who might be trying to accelerate their career. If they keep missing out on stuff because that final round just never happens, then, I may look elsewhere. So there are a bunch of different concerns in there. And also at the individual level, there's the technical expert doesn't want to go into the selling side of things. And there's so many effects that happen. What have companies typically done to try and solve this before they look at training that you might provide? What are other things that they have tried?
In my experience with my clients, I would say they've typically tried the traditional stuff like, let's bring in a presentation trainer.
Right.
Well, you get the generic presentation training.
That makes sense.
Makes sense, right? So they've tried that. They have tried having executives come in and coach the team to prepare.
Mm-hmm.
And they've tried to, basically, it's sort of, how do we solve it ourselves? So with that combination of outside help, generic training, internal coaching by more experienced executives.
Probably throwing some budget at it too to make it look fancy and all the bells and whistles, right?
It is. And I think once, marketing is a wonderful resource, obviously, as part of this process. But having an attractive deck doesn't necessarily solve it if you're not presenting against that deck in a meaningful way, in a meaningful way that's resonant with the audience to whom you're presenting.
Okay, so you've described there's the marketing side of things, which can make it look flashy, but maybe not get across the human element. But then the two that you described, the sort of sales or presentation skills type stuff, and then also getting an executive. Why would those things have failed?
Anecdotally, for generic presentation training, you didn't get what we actually do. You don't understand what it's like to be part of a diverse team of technical experts who are asked to become a cohesive, collaborative presentation team, right? To represent that to the potential client. So the generic presentation training will address some aspects to being a good presenter, but not in the context of an interview in the construction industry. So there's that sort of pushback. It didn't really work. In terms of internal coaches helping the team prep, get through the dry runs, sometimes, despite their best effort, it can sound more like criticism of the presentation team and individuals rather than helping them get better. In the final days of prepping for an interview, you want the team to feel more confident. You want the team to feel more capable of doing a good job. You want them to show up and have the right poise and ease and conversational tone. but it can often feel like criticism, which diminishes that outcome in terms of how you show.
And no one wants to be hearing from the big boss that wasn't so good, and that's not the thing you need right before the big presentation.
Right. So sometimes the outside voice can be more helpful and objective, I guess.
Yeah. And when you're talking about the sales training or the presentation skills type training, the generic stuff, I was just thinking back to do not have more than 8 bullet points on a slide, and just the typical stuff that you might feel a bit more confident, but it's not necessarily winning the deal.
Right. That's I think an appropriate observation, because I think oftentimes in a construction project there's a lot going on, and the slides can be incredibly busy. So whatever is the 8 bullet points, 5 words per bullet point, it's way more than that.
Okay.
It can be a lot of graphics and a lot of like very cool looking stuff. And the challenge then is to draw the attention of the audience to the right part of the slide. So sometimes I'll help them, have a blowout of the particular part of that construction site image that you have on the screen. Like, where are we really talking about here? So it's helping the presenter get the audience focused to the right aspect of the slide and making it and to do that, making the slide less busy. Brilliant. Ultimately.
Okay. I want to get into what you actually offer in a moment, but first, just about your background or yourself, what led you to focus on this particular area of construction industry and that final interview stage training?
I think we got invited, as is typical in our business, it is a referral business, and we got invited to meet with a construction company, our first client. And my background, grew up in sales, was a kid who declared he wanted to be in sales before he knew what selling actually entailed and how challenging it can be. So I wasn't a natural salesperson, and I had to learn the hard way the skills or the competencies to be effective in a selling role. And then transitioned into not just selling, but actually training people in selling and sales skills and presentation skills. That evolved into my book, Selling with Presence, which gets to the absolutely, in my view, most important aspect to be an effective presenter and salesperson. And that is to have an appropriate presence, to be appropriately expressive, to demonstrate appropriate passion for what it is you're trying to sell. So I went from there, into helping classroom type training, into coaching individuals and then teams, and got invited by this construction company to come in and help them. So I think
from there,
it grew from there, and it was sort of my team's understanding just how challenging it is to step into that role when it's not your day-to-day. It's not part of your day-to-day responsibility.
You've been there, yeah. No, I get that. And then so it naturally grew from there into the wider construction training that you offer. So can we talk about that? What exactly are you offering to companies in that construction sector?
We have a sort of a menu list, right? We can, depending on what needs they have, what the level of experience and expertise or competencies that they're presenting bench has, we'll offer anything from a half day, 1 day, 2 day foundational training that then typically will morph or evolve into for active opportunities, we'll coach some of the individuals, maybe depending on, again, what they're trying to achieve, what skill they're trying to work on. We'll do 90-minute 2-hour sessions, 1 to 3 of them. So help particular individuals, maybe the pre-con manager, hone his presentation, the site super, get clear on what needs he wants to address. So that individual coaching that then typically culminates in actively coaching a complete interview team in the run up to them participating in the interview. And that can be second to last or last coaching that we'll do with them as a collective.
Brilliant. 1 second. Children.
I love you, child.
Yes. Excellent. So to summarize that, there are kind of 3 main phases. You've got the prep stage, the almost classroom-based education and awareness and everyone on the same page. This is what we need to know and understand. And then you're going into the individual coaching where it's needed. And maybe it's across different members because they might be pairing up on different sections, but it's working with them one-to-one on a few sessions. And then finally wrapping it all up with the team to do some dry runs. So they're all just humming along. Okay. I like that. That a fair summary?
Yeah, that's a great summary. I wish I'd said that.
Oh, no worries. Perfect. So we talked about what the problems were, what your services are, and also some of the solutions that they might have tried. I'm curious, what are some things that people might, I don't know, object to or ask about? I'm suspecting that you'll probably hear things like, we've tried sales training before, or, will you fit our culture? Because we're a very different organization. I heard that a lot in my career as a consultant in the HR space. We're very different here. So those two are probably the two big ones, right? How would you address those?
It's right. Yes, we have heard that often. Isn't that sort of the biggest challenge of change management? Yeah, we've done that before. So I think it's meeting them where they are and trying to understand, what have you done before in greater detail, and where we have differentiated ourselves is that we have customized our design to meet what they're trying to achieve, which is let's rock the final interview. And we build a very culture specific customer oriented training and coaching program that in our experience has resonated very well with what they've tried to do in the past. And I think just to honk our own horn here a little bit, we got that pushback many years ago with a client, and I got to talk to the CEO, and I was like, so what are you trying to achieve if by bringing a training organization in, or bringing coaches and a training organization in? And he said, here's my deal. I'm tired of coming second in interviews. I want our team to come first or last. And what do I mean by that? He said, I mean, I want them to change things up, to be willing to take some risks, to break out of the mold of the status quo of sounding like, dressing like, speaking like everybody else, our competitors. So he asked, can you guys help us with that? I said, give us a chance. And that's what we did.
That naturally feeds me into my next question, because I was wondering, I know there are so many elements involved in an RFP process and whether you win or lose a deal. It comes down to cost and dimensions, delivery, whatever it may be. So you can't just say, oh, yeah, do this training, you'll win everything. But what is the feedback? Maybe it's in terms of confidence or some other measure. What feedback have you had from people who've gone through this training?
I think the most gratifying feedback that we have got in debriefing sessions with participants after the sessions, and again, sort of emphasizing that they are people who are really good at what they do technically and not necessarily salespeople or presenters, right? And the feedback we've got is, you helped build my confidence. You helped me get more comfortable in understanding what it is I need to do when I'm in an interview. You helped me get off that formal presentation style I thought I needed to have into a more conversational style in talking about what I do. And that, to me, in working with people who are in so much trepidation of these kind of interview scenarios, it's a total joy to help that kind of individual even make a small step forward in wanting to show up and raise their hand to be part of the deep bench of interview participants. Yeah. Just another sort of anecdotal piece is, oftentimes when I coach individuals, I'll reach out to them after the interview and just debrief how it went. Yeah. And it has always, absolutely always been, it was so much better than I thought. And again, sort of having that understanding of what it is, how I need to be, yeah, and how I need to have that engagement and that emotional availability to the process, and not sound like a robot presenting, is a relief and becomes very satisfying.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Get that feedback feels so great. And of course, obviously, winning more deals.
Yeah. That's the big one, isn't it? Yeah.
It's the big one, right? It is the when I hear from the account manager, their senior exec, that we didn't think we'd win it and we won it. That's gratifying. There's always a multitude of factors that go into whether a deal is won or lost. But if I play any small part, or any of my team plays any small part in helping that win, it is we literally are as excited as.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. Brilliant. I'm just thinking both from an individual and a team basis over my life, whether that's in sports or business or whatever it may be. There are definitely moments you pick when you've had a coach or some guidance, some external perspective, whatever, and the performance has improved. It's just no question. So I love the fact you're getting this feedback from people, both at the confidence level and that CEO who said, I just want to leave everything out on the field, or put everything out there and do the best that we could possibly do. So for people listening, then I just want to summarize super quickly. So it's sales and presentation skills for companies going through that final interview stage in the construction sector to win the final project, let's say. And it's for those companies where they've gone through the whole RFP process and that final round and they fall over. So you're about giving them the tools, the expertise, and probably that confidence to get them, to give them their all and the best shot at that final stage. Which from a business perspective means you win more deals, there's less staff turnover, or you can hire better people and you can win better prestige projects, all that kind of thing. And then it's delivered through kind of a 3-stage process. One is the workshop style learning for either a half day through to 2 days. And then secondly, it's around the one-to-one coaching, whether it's individual or hybrid, as in parts of the team. And then finally wrapping it all up into 1 or 2 dry runs, so everyone's on point, know exactly what's going to happen and feeling good about it all, so that they can really shine on the big day. And then do you help them if they win that? Does anything happen after it, or do you stop in for a champagne? How does it work after it? It's wonderful for us and the team when we then, having won the project, we then work with the broader project team. So it'll include the general contractor project team. It'll include the design team, the owner's project manager. So whatever the participants in the broader project team are, we have an opportunity to help them. So we do a half-day, we call it a partnering session. We'll do a half-day partnering session where we work with that team, helping them identify their objectives and measurements for success of the team. We'll help them identify norms of how they're going to work together. We'll help them identify how they're going to manage conflict, because invariably, right, in a high pressure, large construction project, there are going to be points, moments where things go wrong. So how are we going to manage those difficult moments where it's maybe the GC team having an issue with the design team, and how do you overcome that in a way that maintains a high quality of relationship? So it's funny. We work with them and help them identify concrete outcomes, on time, on budget, right? An obvious one. But how are we going to get there? So we'll get down into the more granular detail of how are we going to make sure we stay on time, on budget. We'll get down into how are we going to involve the community, if that's an important element of this project. What are the things we're going to do to engage with the community, and get them thinking creatively on that. And ultimately, what are the hard outcomes and the soft outcomes you're looking for here? And one of the interesting outcomes that I hear most consistently in terms of soft outcomes is that we get to the end of this project and we want to work together again. And right, it's just, we all forget, that being on a winning team is one of the most gratifying, satisfying experiences we can have. And oftentimes we get so lost in the tasks that we don't attend to what it takes to have that positive outcome relationally. So what we then help them build into the project, it might be a 2-year, 3-year, 5-year project. We build in maintenance checks. So there's task maintenance, team maintenance. So every quarter they'll sit down and say, how are we doing?
are we doing from a relationship standpoint here? And have an opportunity for people to identify that and just get away from timeline stuff, issues on site, supply chain issues, right? And talk about how are we doing as a team. And it has anecdotally increased the engagement, the satisfaction, the success of these project teams.
I'll let you go soon, but I have to ask about that. Is there sometimes a reaction that, oh, it's that soft skills stuff that we don't want to hear about that kind of thing, or do people see value in it?
I think depending on sometimes depending where they are in their career, what their experiences have been, there can be an initial resistance.
Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah, initial resistance.
But it's I'm not just a come by kind of person. I'm like, it's about being realistic. It's about being engaging people in the right way. We're all human. Yeah. Right. Our experience is universally that we are human and we are social animals. Right. We mostly like the engagement with other human beings. So it's bringing that attention to the team. How can we think about ourselves as a collection of human beings trying to do the best we can? Because nobody sets out to do harm. Nobody sets out to cause conflict. So it's sort of bringing a conscious attention to that aspect of what makes a team successful.
Yeah. That's my experience too over the years, is certainly that sometimes you do get resistance to that kind of training or those sessions, and then they get in there and go, man, this was good.
Right.
And they just about every time they think that this was worth doing. So yeah. Reggie, we've covered a lot of ground, and this is excellent. I love what you're doing. If people want to learn more about what you offer, what should they do next?
They can go to our website, organizationlearninggroup.com. Fill out the contact page. My number is on there. You can pick my number off the website, 781-956-0629, and text me. And I'd be happy to text you. You can text me, and I'd be happy to set up a conversation and see what you're trying to do.
Very good. So if you're listening to this on the go, you can tell that Reggie is not a big, scary person. He's a guy who loves construction. He loves this area, very passionate, but he's also a very nice guy as well. So Reggie, thank you for talking and thanks for sharing your whole process with me. I really enjoyed this.
Total pleasure, Ben. Nice to talk to you.